Call to order the regular board meeting of February 25th, 2020 at 7 p.m. The Pledge of Allegiance tonight will be led by the Anchor Bay Junior ROTC. Please rise. Can we get a round of applause for the young men and women from the Anchor Bay Junior ROTC? Item 3, roll call. Clerk Berry, please call the roll.
Supervisor Acciavatti.
Here.
Treasurer LaFata.
Here.
Trustee Anderson.
Here.
Trustee Joseph.
Here.
Trustee Vosberg. Here. Trustee Demink.
Here.
Clerk Berry is here.
All members are present. Item 4, presentations. 4A, a presentation by the Public Safety Director to introduce 3 new patrol officers and
thank you.
4 part-time firefighters. Director Kersten.
Yes. I think we're going to do the police officers first. I'd like to introduce Jacob Rhein, Prainito, and VanAkenand. Please stand. These are our 3 newest officers. These candidates have passed an extensive pre-employment testing and an extensive background. All candidates are sworn certified officers. I'd like to introduce them to the board and have them sworn in to start employment with Chesterfield Township Police Department.
You may proceed, Clerk Berry.
Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I do solemnly swear
I do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of this state,
and the Constitution of this state,
and that I will faithfully perform the duties
and I will faithfully perform the duties
of the office of police officer
of the office of police officer
in and for the Township of Chesterfield,
in and for the Township of Chesterfield,
County of Macomb,
County of Macomb,
State of Michigan,
State of
to
Michigan,
the best of my ability,
to the best of my ability,
so help me God.
so help me God.
Congratulations. Congratulations. Please sign your please.
Sergeant Rick Rhein, this is his son. That being said, Rick, he's going to be your man.
Thank you. Welcome aboard Officer Rhein, Officer Prainito, and Officer VanAkenand. Welcome to Chesterfield. Director Kersten.
I have 4 firefighters that I'd like to present to you also. Taylor Lane, Nathan McKee, Nicholas Peruzzo, and Scott Pomoville. If you would mind coming up front. You guys wouldn't mind lining up right in front of the officers here? Follow the clerk's directions.
Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I do solemnly swear. I do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States. That I will support the Constitution of the United States. And the Constitution of this state. And the Constitution of this state. And that I will faithfully perform the duties. And I will faithfully perform the duties of the office of firefighter. The office of firefighter. In and for the Township of Chesterfield. In and for the Township of Chesterfield. County of Macomb. County of Macomb. State of Michigan. State of Michigan. To the best of my ability. To the best of my ability. So help me God. So help me God. Congratulations.
Taylor, if you can step around here, we'll call up your family members also, whoever you would like. All these candidates, quality individuals, went through extensive background and also extensive training to get to this point. I welcome them aboard, and we've got a great team, and this is going to add to it. Thank you very much, Board. I appreciate all you do to support the public safety fund.
Thank you.
Picture?
Any further pictures? And Director Kersten, do you have something off-site where?
Yes, they're both going to the respective departments with family, and they'll get their tours of all public safety buildings.
Thank you and welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Excuse me. We'll give them a couple minutes here, and Director Madson, you could probably get up to the podium for 4B.
It's amazing.
Item 4B, a presentation by the Chesterfield Township Library Board of Trustees. Director Madson. Oh, let's turn on your podium microphone.
Good evening. I am Elizabeth Madson, Library Director at our public library, the Chesterfield Township Library. As you know, in 1954, our library began in the home of Bernard and Ceola Trinity, not far from here, at 47460 Sugarbush Road. And for 40 years, our public library was located in the Trinity family home. Since legal establishment in 1994, 25 years ago, our library has rented space in facilities in 4 different locations. 3 of those locations were at the Bayside Mall, and our current location at 23 in Gratiot in the warehouse district behind the movie theater. For 66 years, our public library has been located in temporary facilities. In 2018, the library board purchased about 6 acres of vacant land not far from here at 21 Mile and Sugarbush Road for the purpose of building a new public library. On November 1st, 2018, the public library held a public hearing for the community to give feedback on the library purchasing that vacant land. Since the purchase, the library has been working with the architecture firm Stantec to create a preliminary conceptual design for the new public library. On August 19th, 2019, the library held another public hearing for the community to give feedback on the features they would like to see in their new public library. And at this time, I would like to introduce David Rose, Senior Design Architect with Stantec, and he'll share his design for our community's new public library. David?
Well, I think it's actually our design. I hope it's our design. We, as the slide says, we tried to design with community in mind. We do a lot of projects that are in communities, and we're very grateful for the opportunity to come into a community and bring high-quality design work to the community. So we have quite a few slides here. I actually thought you were going to get a packet ahead of time. I guess you did not, if I understand it right. So I'll take you through this. If you think
Director Duchesne, would you mind dimming the lights for us?
Yeah, that would help too. If I'm going into too much detail, just give me a nod and I'll speed through it a little more quickly. So we start the design process establishing guiding principles for the project, and this is the part that I think is the we part. This is not our guiding principles. It's not, it's a shared vision really for what the building is all about. These are the core values that the library had established really prior to our involvement. They included equal access, democracy, freedom to read, and the library is a great equalizer. And we thought these were excellent overall high-level aspirational goals for the project and for the function of the library. They're the kind of things that we preach to a lot of our clients that don't quite have their acts together yet, but you guys already had your act together, so that was a fantastic thing to see. One of the questions that we ask in the beginning is, for the project to be successful, it must, and then we let people fill in that sentence. And so these were the must-do items for this project. It included make a good citizen, educate all, welcome all, including first-timers, promote sustainability, be adaptable, including future expansion, and fit the community, and also be seen as a library, but not just a library. So taking the concept of library and expanding it. These are a little small, but the project goals for the community aspect are to be a living room for the community, to provide outdoor reading program and classroom space. It's a very beautiful site if you're familiar with it at all. So the outdoor aspect of it was very exciting to us. Keep as many trees as possible. The site's filled with trees at this point, and we want to try and design around those trees and save as many of those as we can. Tie into the township pathways plan. There's a plan for pathways. As you know, this site is not very far from here, and so thinking about interconnections between this central complex and the library are a very important element of the design as well. Other specific facility goals or building goals are to be timeless, having a long-lasting wow effect with the design, low maintenance, locally serviceable. We don't want you to be stuck with a building that requires a lot of ongoing maintenance. We want to keep the cost of that low over a period of time. Sustainability with low operating and energy costs are thought to be critical. Natural lighting, certainly any space where reading is involved and studying is involved, we believe in the benefits of natural light. A leak-free envelope, that seems fairly obvious, but you'd be surprised. So we've talked about things like pitched roofs and other things that are fairly foolproof and not, they're not likely to have issues. Convenient power throughout the building because power is so much in demand in libraries nowadays. And stormwater management is a huge issue on this site. Actually, it's not a huge issue. It could be a huge issue if you were not paying attention to it. So thinking about how the stormwater on the site drains off the site and making sure that the library is never exposed to any kind of flooding or water issues. So that takes us with those drivers in mind into the design of the site. This is an aerial view of the site. As you can see, the trees that separate this site from the surrounding neighborhood behind, the subdivision that's behind, are pretty significant, mature trees. These are the kind of trees that we plant at a smaller scale and wait 30 years, 40 years for those to grow. So since you have them, we want to save them. You can also see that the frontage along the main road is fairly open. There's only a handful of trees in most of that area, and so when you think about building placement, it starts to lead you to that. If you look at the site, there's a high end to the west and a low end to the east, and there's a drain area that's just off the site that's a retention area for the entire area, not just this site, but the subdivision behind to the south. And so thinking about that drainage, that yellow line, and how water gets to that drain area is very important. Visibility of the site, it's an excellent site from a visibility point of view. The one thing I can't change is your site, but I'm happy to say I don't want to. It's excellent from the point of view of most of the parameters of the site, and visibility is a big part of that. We also need to be mindful that it's a very high-speed kind of view to the site along the main road. Again, the trees are very key to the site, and trying to design around those trees and retain as many as possible was a goal. So that kind of leaves us with an ideal building zone in this area of orange where you would place the building and not really have too much in the way of having to take down trees or modify the site in a significant way. So basically with the site, we want to preserve nature. We want to maximize the visibility of the building from off the site. We would like the long axis to run east and west from an energy point of view. That's an ideal scenario. The building wants to be transparent to the north so that when you do go by on the road, you can see into the building and understand what it is, that it is in fact a library. The natural materials of the site, wood, masonry, and glass, are to be reflected in the building so that it marries well with the site. The height for visibility and interior scale, it's interesting, I came here today and this is the first time I've been in this building, and I walked into this tall space and I figured, well, they'll understand the height part and they'll understand the skylight at the top of the high scale, so that's good to see. We're also trying to make this building flexible for the future because libraries are in a state of change, and we feel that this building will be at the cutting edge of what's going on in community libraries, but things will continue to evolve, particularly with technology, and so to make the building flexible enough to adapt to those changes is an important issue, to future-proof the building. And then we want to embrace the context of the community and the surrounding area of the site. So basic building planning, the site slopes from the western end to the eastern end, and it's fairly significant in slope. It's not a full story, but it's enough that you really do have to deal with it. Our initial thoughts were a one-story approach to the building right from the get-go, so we wouldn't have to build an elevator, we wouldn't have to have exit stairs, we would maximize the efficiency of the building. And so there's a kind of a high tier, a middle tier, and a low tier. The high tier is kind of the smaller height of the building, the middle is obviously medium, and the bottom tier is the tallest area of the building if we keep the datum line of the top, the roof line, consistent. So ultimately, that led to this site plan, and you'll see this on the board in the back of the room too if you want to look at it in more detail later. But this is, you see the three pavilions that you just saw in section plus one additional, which is actually the staff spaces on the western or right or left-hand end. On the right-hand end, you'll see the parking lot and the entry from the main road, and there's also a small entry from Sugarbush on the west that's more of a service drop-off and staff location. And the main entry to the building is facing to the east. And so again, that small, medium, and large concept. So what's in those elements? Number one, the far eastern end, the tallest end, is the entry point. It's the place of assembly and community, so you'll see larger scale rooms there, greater height rooms, bigger spaces more like the one we're in. If you work your way back, pavilion, we call these pavilions. Pavilion number 2 is where the adult collections and programming are located. Pavilion 3, as it's decreasing in scale, is focused more on youth collections, kids collections, particularly very young kids, and so that's reduced in scale, which is appropriate. And then the last element in Pavilion 4 is the staff and support spaces. So this is a more detailed floor plan, and you're not going to be able to read too much from where you're sitting, but if you look on the part that's labeled main entry, there are some larger assembly spaces to be used for community functions. There's open seating areas. There's a maker space, which is a place that is much in demand in libraries now. And there are some staff areas in that front piece, and there's some support spaces. It's also designed to operate after hours, so the rest of the library can be closed down and the front piece can be operated with extended hours without a security concern. The middle piece and the back piece, so the medium and the small pavilions, are again collections, adults in the middle and children in the back. They're focused around a central area that's tall, much like your space out here with a skylight in it. And I promise I did not see this before working on this design. But I think it's a great idea to have that tall space at the center of the buildings. And in the back, as you can kind of tell, are office spaces and workstations for the staff. And this is a little bit larger view of these. And I'm not going to take you into the details of those, but you can certainly ask questions if you're interested. And so finally, the image. We talked about the idea of a very foolproof roof and a pitched roof. We really are wanting to blend into this residential surrounding context, but still have this building have enough scale and presence to be read as something beyond just a house. And so pitched roofs of larger scale and the idea of multiple pavilions is something that goes way back in architecture. It's a very common theme for many centuries. And so these are some examples of where this has been done before. We're not the first ones, obviously, to try this. We did just recently complete, this is a Child Development Center at Grand Rapids Community College. It's just won an AIA award about 6 months ago, and it's really quite a beautiful facility that explores a little bit of the same idea of a building on a cascading site that's diminishing in scale as it moves across the length of the building. And also it uses a lot of the same sort of natural materials, wood and masonry and pitched roof. So some of those same elements are in that building. We're also wanting very much to engage with the woods that we retain. We want to use as really almost picture windows into the woods so that as you're reading a book, you're in the context of nature. There's also this kind of crazy idea that we had about a tree house. And so if we can retain the woods to the extent that we think we can plant a pavilion. It can either be on the grade, it could be supported up in the air, but it would be engaged in the woods. So there's a way to go from the building out into the woods, read, tell stories, and just spend time in nature. And then the final image is just, this is a view looking toward the main entry and the large pavilion with the smaller pavilions working their way back from the outside. It's a pitched roof, skylight at the top, brick as the major exterior lower material, a pretty fair amount of glass, but controlled glass placed where you want to have it and not where you don't. And so this is what this would be the middle pavilion, the adult collection area would look like on the inside. So again, tall skylight at the top. We're thinking wood framed, so the structure of the building would all be sustainable wood materials with masonry on the outside, and kept low enough in scale, at least in the center area, that you can see through into the trees and into the woods and participate in nature as a part of the experience. So that's kind of it. Is there anything I can tell you more about?
Questions from the board? Trustee Joseph.
Yeah, I was just wondering if you could give us an idea of the square footage of each of the 3 pavilions.
So I'm terrible with numbers, and I prepared a bunch of numbers before I came, but I can't tell you per pavilion. The total is about 36,000.
Great.
So I think the front one's probably around 12, and then they kind of work their way back in scale from that.
Great. Thank you. Great design.
Thank you.
Any further board comments? Thank you so much, Dave, for coming out.
Thank you.
Director Madson.
Thanks for your time.
We're going to move on to item number 5, department reports. If any departments would like to update the board. Director Coddington.
Got it. Good evening. I just want to remind everybody that March 5th, next week, we're going to be having a meeting here in this meeting room talking about the high water and the water levels for this year in 2020 along Lake St. Clair and Anchor Bay. We're going to have lots of people here that are going to be able to give us good information on what the anticipated levels are. We will also have people here to help people if they want to do further stuff other than sandbagging at their house. We'll have some brochures here on stuff that they may be able to buy or use for their own use. And I just encourage everybody to please come out March 5th. I think it's from 6 to 8 in the evening. And please try and make it out. And please prepare for higher water this year than last year. Thank you. I'm sorry, it's March 4th. March 4th. Retract March 5th.
Any further departments reports?
I shut the lights off. Okay. This is one. I just want to give a quick update on our website. We've been tracking it here for about a year. Brad, can you get the lights? Okay, so we've had our new website for about a year and a half. The past year we've done some tracking on it, and I just wanted to give you some numbers. Last year we had 120,000 visits directly to our website. And with that, the average duration people stayed on our website was about 2 minutes, 19 seconds. Industry standards are about 2 to 3 minutes. So we're doing really good there. And then 42% visits have bounced, which means they left our website after one hit. National standards, they want you under 60%. So we're keeping people active and engaged in our website. And with that, 2.7 actions hits people took, and it's usually about 2 to 3. So I wanted to let you guys know also that searches helped us a lot determine what people were looking for on our website. And with that, we had about 13,000 searches. Major searches on our website were the taxes, the water bills, passports. So what we were able to do is we created some new buttons on our website so the residents and visitors could easily find some of our information. One good thing we started updating last year was our Notify Me, and I want to click on it just to show you guys really fast what this does. Anyone can subscribe to our Notify Me, and that gives residents push notifications, either email or on their cell phones. So we have elections updates, residential garbage updates, we have an alert center, news, home, and then also calendars for any board meetings and stuff. So anyone can subscribe to that at any time. And then I wanted to let you guys know also, with reviewing what we were getting back from this information, we added a tax and water bill icon here. So the residents just have to pick on that, and it'll take them right to our website for all that information. We have agendas, minutes, and videos. I'll click on that in a minute. Election information. Passports was another big thing that we got a lot of, actually the most, that we had the most searches for passports, so we were able to create a button for passports. Live streaming is, we created this button, so anyone that wants to view our township board meetings can just click on live streaming and it goes straight to our YouTube channel. And then, it's going a little slow right now. I wanted to show you guys, though, how it goes on to our YouTube channel and then what residents can click on, which is right here. So if I were to click on this, this just takes me right to our video of what we're doing right now. And then employment opportunities was another big search. So we now have an employment opportunity button, township bids, and garbage information. And with this, if you scroll down a little further on our website, we do put updates on here, alerts that are on that notify section as well, and a resident guide for any new residents moving into Chesterfield Township for some general information about our community and what we offer. We do have a section on our Anchor Bay water levels. Township dashboards is something we're going to be increasing on. We've got some public safety dashboards in our finances, but moving forward, we are working on a project management dashboard and then also a building department dashboard that we'll be updating on here monthly as well. We have some information on our census and then some township spotlights. So that's where we are today. And then I'm going to click on agendas, minutes, and videos.
Good evening. I'm Michelle Niza from the clerk's office. I just wanted to show you a little bit in regards to our agendas and minutes and boards and commissions software, which is integrated right into the website seamlessly, so you won't even know that you're in a different part. Basically, this is just giving you the little more robust version of the website in regards to really agendas, minutes, and calendars, and a little bit deeper dive into that. So there's the home page. You can click on the calendar for what you're looking for. On the side, you can see what today's meetings are, upcoming meetings, and then there are some recent meetings. So if there's something that you're looking for, you could just press right into that. It would bring you up on those agendas. On some of them, you'll notice there are video buttons. That should be changing a little bit based on the live stream. The feed should just go seamlessly now from live into an archive form, so you'll just be able to watch that live and then click on it for any archives for what you're looking for. Here you can meet your board, look at any of the board members, maybe a little bit of a bio and picture so you know who they are. You can search for things that you're looking for, maybe a general term or a resolution or a number, and it'll bring that up. Down here, you can subscribe to any boards or commissions that we have. What you would do is just click on that subscribe little tab there, and it would take you a little bit further into it. You would let it know, and just by clicking what boards or commissions you would like to be notified of, and then what it'll do is have you verify that in fact is you. It just lets you know that it may go to your spam email, so it will not send those updates unless you verify that that is you by clicking into your email and saying that you accept the link from us. And then once you do, if we publish any agendas or any updates, you would get the link and you would just be able to click right into the system. So that's a good tool if you're looking for a specific meeting or you want to be updated by all the meetings. The home page here kind of lets you know a little bit about the site, and then also how to place an item on the agenda, things of that nature. There's the current administrative procedure order to let you know that information. So you can click all in that. You can go to this Welcome to the Township, and it'll take you to the next page, and that basically will let you know what you can actually do within this, kind of review the meeting calendar again, view meeting details, search the online library, subscribe, connect with us, view the live stream. Kind of gives you a little bit of a little more of a synopsis of everything going on there. There are archives within those meetings, so let me go ahead and show you that. That'll take you into the Code of Ordinances also, and we still keep part of those on just as like a backup. Not every one of them is totally automated, so you might get a link and that would explain to you how to get those. It's going a little bit slow. But here are the boards and commissions. So if you click into like the archives here, it'll take you into another system where a lot of that's housed for record purposes and retention, and it'll give you all those. So there's just another way to search. You can search for your municipal code or keywords again in this system. So it's just there's a couple different ways to get the information that you would like. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions for the presenters on our website and the various portals and ways to find information? Thank you very much. Any further updates on the board? Trustees Mink.
These are messages from the Leisure Services Division of the Township. Registration for spring season baseball is here. Select leagues are available for 5 to 15-year-olds. Registration is taking place now through March 20th for T-ball, pitching machine, minors, majors, and senior leagues. Contact Parks and Recs, 949-0400, extension 4 for specifics. Summer camp registration, March 11th for residents and March 13th for non-residents. Campus state license, open to boys and girls in 1st through 6th grade and fills up fast. A mom-to-mom sale, Saturday, March 21st from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the municipal offices. Admission is free. Tables are $25 while supplies last. Chesterfield Township has senior activities and services tailored for our friends 55 and older. Enjoy a variety of wellness activities along with plenty of good times and laughter. Contact Senior Services at 949-0400, extension 7 for further details. Also, if you want to gather your friends and lend a hand as Chesterfield Township prepares for the water levels along Anchor Bay to rise, DPW is looking for groups of 10 or more people to volunteer their time filling sandbags to minimize potential flood damage. Now is your chance to give back to your community and positively impact the lives of your neighbors. We kindly invite you to join efforts and fight the floods. To donate your time, please contact our DPW at 949-0400, extension 3. Thank you, Mr. Supervisor.
Any further trustee updates? Trustee Joseph.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Just wanted to update the board on a issue that we were here till after midnight, I think, or thereabouts 2 weeks ago, that having to do with the cell tower construction on Jefferson. So the decision of the board was obviously to allow the Planning Commission to hear that special land use petition. After much debate, it was taken back to the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission took some additional information from the cell tower construction people, specifically at the completion of the initial public hearing. There was some requests from commission members on propagation maps, that being like, what coverage range we would have with this tower and certain things along those lines. The construction company came forward, provided those additional maps. The board then took no public testimony. The public hearing had been closed. The special land use petition, I made a motion that we deny the special land use, and I outlined the reasons within the ordinance that afforded the board the opportunity to deny based on the, in my opinion, and eventually in the opinion of the fellow board members, the petitioner had not met all of the conditions of the special land use, and the petition to continue with the approval of the special land use and construction of the tower was denied. Again, in my opinion, having looked at the contract, and I would like to talk with council a little bit more before bringing, if there is a need to bring anything back to the board. The original contract indicated that the board had approved this cell tower contingent upon Planning Commission approval of the special land use petition. In my opinion, that has not been satisfied. The Planning Commission has voted and ruled. I believe that the petitioner may have some belief in terms of an appeal process, which may or may not be on a special land use, but in our view, the contract that we entered into afforded the construction of the tower based on approval of the Planning Commission. It was contingent upon the approval of the Planning Commission, not any relief that they might attempt to seek to override the Planning Commission. The contract was pretty specific. I would argue that we have effectively ended that contract. So I would like to talk with council and find out before we have any additional meetings where residents come in and are concerned about that area, because as you remember from 2 weeks ago, it was a very well-attended board meeting. The Planning Commission was even more well-attended, and I think people feel very strongly there. Moving forward, the hope is, and I know that the cell tower construction people were working for some time with Clerk Berry and Supervisor Acciavatti on this project, is that we continue that same collaborative spirit and try to help this cell tower company look to build and construct a tower that is in an area that is more appropriate and not near residential. Because one thing I think we determined, which wasn't in much debate, was the need for additional cell service in that area. And I think a number of residents who talked about why they didn't want it in their neighborhood necessarily did also admit that the coverage is a bit lacking. So I think there's no dispute that we need additional coverage out there. I know that the Planning Commission members are more than interested, and I hope there are members of this board that will also participate in a collaborative effort to help find an appropriate tower in that area to improve coverage. Again, my opinion was and is this ain't it. That is not the area. And so I just wanted to update the board on that. It was the latest board night I'd ever participated in, and I know people were very invested in that. So just definitively, the Planning Commission voted that petition down. Thank you.
Thank you for the Planning Commission update. Any further trustees' reports? Bring it up to Clerk Berry.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Would just like to update the public on the Cannabis Committee. Trustee Joseph and I co-chair that committee. It was scheduled to meet yesterday, but due to the availability of some of our consultants, it was moved to next week. So for anyone who is interested in the business of that committee and the issues that they are managing, there will be a Cannabis Committee meeting next week. The Notify Me option on the website is a good way to stay abreast of those changes to meeting schedules, but also you may contact the clerk's office when we also have any updated agendas and meeting information for you. So that will be next week. and with hopeful presentation to the full Board of Trustees with our findings on March the 17th. The March 17th regular board meeting. In addition to that, I'd like to update everyone with regards to the upcoming presidential primary election. That is March 10th, Tuesday, March 10th. Polls will be open from 7 a.m. until 8 p.m. If you have requested an absentee ballot and submitted a completed absentee ballot application to our office, you should have received your absentee ballot by now. If you have not received that ballot, please contact the clerk's office and we can find out why it is that you haven't received that and issue another ballot for you. In the event that your chosen candidate on your partisan ballot drops out of the race, or you have a difference in your choice, you may come to the clerk's office and request to spoil that ballot and receive a new ballot if you have voted by absentee. Clearly, that is not on election day. You can spoil a ballot in the precinct, and the precinct workers will assist you. However, if you've already submitted an absentee ballot to us and you would like to make a change to that ballot for any reason, you may do so by requesting that the clerk's department spoil your ballot and issue a new one. In addition to that, you are allowed to register to vote in the presidential primary up to and including Election Day. However, if you do register on Election Day, you must do that in the clerk's office. You cannot do that in a precinct location. That must take place here at the Township Office Complex at the clerk's office. You will then have the option of either voting an absentee ballot here or going to the precinct and casting a regular ballot. Again, if there's any questions with regards to same-day registration, please contact the clerk's office. Lastly, the last change that is new to this election is no reason absentee voting. If you have never voted absentee before because you did not feel you qualified, you no longer need a reason to vote absentee. Anyone may request an absentee ballot from the clerk's office up to 4 p.m. the day before the election. However, if you request an emergency absentee ballot, then you must vote that at the clerk's office. That is a ballot that is requested the day before the election. So if you have any questions or if you have any significant concerns, any specific circumstances that you would like some clarification on how you can participate in the upcoming March 10th presidential primary election, please contact the clerk's office. Anyone is able to help you. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further board updates? Moving on to item number 6 is the consent agenda. All items under the consent agenda are considered routine by the board and will be enacted in one motion. There's no no separate discussion of these items. If discussion of any item is required by a board member, it will be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. Public comments on the consent agenda are permitted. There are 6 items on tonight's consent agenda included in your packet. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Motion by Clerk Berry. Support by Trustee Joseph to approve the consent agenda. Discussion from the board. Any comments from the public on the consent agenda? Motion by Clerk Berry, support by Trustee Joseph to approve the consent agenda. Clerk Berry, please call the roll.
Clerk Berry, aye. Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg. Aye. Treasurer LaFata.
Aye.
Supervisor Acciavatti.
Aye. The consent agenda is adopted. Item 7 is the regular agenda, 7A. A request from Supervisor Acciavatti to set a public hearing for March 17th, 2020 at 7 p.m. to hear comments from the public on the Michigan Department of Natural Resources Trust Fund grant for the Salt River Nature Center acquisition. Do I have a motion?
Motion to set a public hearing for March 17th, 2020 at 7 p.m. to hear comments from the public on the Michigan Department Natural Resources Trust Fund grant.
Motion by Clerk Berry, support by Trustee Vosberg. Discussion. This is just setting the public hearing. There will be a whole lot more information on the 17th during the public hearing. Any discussion or comments from the public? One more time up to the board. Motion by Clerk Berry, support by Trustee Vosberg to approve item 7A as submitted. Clerk Berry, please call the roll.
Clerk Berry, aye. Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Treasurer LaFata.
Aye.
Supervisor Acciavatti.
Aye. Motion passes. Item 7B, a recommendation by Supervisor Acciavatti to appoint William Smith to the Zoning Board of Appeals with a term ending June 2020. I'll make a motion to approve as stated.
Mr. Supervisor, just clarification, is this a
Hold on,
ZBA or?
we have to get a motion. You have to, the zone, you have to the
I just
ZBA.
want a clarification in your motion.
Motion, but yet to the ZBA, Zoning Board of Appeals. Motion by Supervisor Acciavatti, support by Trustee Vosberg. Trustee Joseph.
I'm sorry, your letter indicated it was a planning commission application, unless I'm reading something wrong.
Well, Mr. Smith, who is a very impressive public servant for years and years, in his letter, put in his letter, Planning Commission, after my meeting with him.
I see.
I am appointing him to the Zoning Board of Appeals at this time, or requesting that he gets appointed. Any further discussion from the board? Comments from the public? Motion by Supervisor, Trustee Joseph.
I'm sorry, I did belabor this. I see he indicated planning commission in the application regarding his interest in planning commission, and then I'm confused. It's not a typo? He applied for the planning commission, but you're appointing him to the ZBA?
That's correct. He applied for a position in his letter, which I request and require an application. In that letter, he put Planning Commission. We had a meeting, and his fit was the ZBA. Generally, ZBA is a great place to start. I'm very, very impressed with Mr. Smith, and he was very comfortable starting in the Zoning Board of Appeals appointment.
Could we potentially in the future then just, that's okay. I'll let it go.
Any further comments from the board or the public? Motion by Supervisor Acciavatti, support by Trustee Vosberg, to approve a recommendation by Supervisor Acciavatti to appoint William Smith to the Zoning Board of Appeals with a term ending June 2020. Clerk Berry, please call the roll.
Supervisor Acciavatti.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee DeMink.
Aye.
Treasurer LaFata.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, aye.
Motion passes. Item 7C, approve a recommendation by the Township Engineer for the Township Board of Trustees to authorize engineering design services to Spalding, DeDecker for the Roselawn Paving Special Assessment Project in the amount of $39,000. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Clerk Berry,
Support.
support by Trustee Vosberg, and there are representatives from Spalding, DeDecker, and Mr. O'Connor.
I'm just available to answer any questions.
Treasurer LaFata.
I have a couple of questions. The general ledger number on this document is Roselawn Drive Special Assessment. Actually, that comes out of the general fund 101-000-01000. It's a cash transfer into an assessment fund.
Okay.
So that means that the money will be transferred out of a general ledger account into a assessment account, which means that for a period of time, whatever the assessment period is, the general fund will be short about $280,000. So it doesn't come out of, there's no such thing as a Roseland Special Assessment Fund. The other question I have is, after doing some research and asking some questions, the $39,000 that we're going to pay for engineering is at risk, from what I understand, talking to our assessor, because if the current estimate is not sufficient to cover the real project quote from one of the contractors from the construction that are going to put the road in, then it has to go back, if it's over 5%, to the residents again and be reapproved. And there's a risk that if it's too much above that it could not be approved, and that $39,000 is going to sit in limbo for a while. Because we've been batting like zero on some of our projects, I'll just mention a few of them, but the Miller Pump Station was about $90,000 over Weber Paddle Park was 300% more.
Try if you can, Treasurer LaFaro, to stay on the Roselawn project.
I'm staying. I'm setting the precedence so that everybody understands that when we look at an estimate and we get back the actual quote, that there's a big differential. And that differential adds a risk to this project of spending $39,000 and then not having the project to go forward, because if it goes back to the residents and they don't like the higher cost that is from our contractor, that the $39,000 sits in limbo because we have a design that's not going to be used. So I'm setting a precedence because we have prior projects that we've had estimates from that when we actually go out for quote, they've been extremely more than the engineering estimates. So we are looking at a risk. Somebody tell me we're not. And I'm just telling everybody they should be conscious of what they're doing. And if you can't appreciate that, you're not trying to run a business, you're trying to fool everybody. So that's what I'm doing, and I'm staying on tack because I'm doing this setting the precedence. So the other thing,
Well, if I could bring up...
Maybe let them answer the questions one at a time while they come.
What I don't want is I don't want you to say, go on to the next person, because I haven't finished
I'll
it.
go back and forth. Ask a question. and you
Your
answer
point
back.
is well taken. Last year, under the same program, we bid Meadow Lawn and Sunrise. And Meadow Lawn was close enough, we actually built the Meadow Lawn project. Sunrise came in, and I don't know if you're going to mention that one, but that came in way over the estimate because of the culvert and the depth of the water. That project was never built, but that preliminary money was spent.
Yeah.
So there is a risk. This project is based on an estimate using last year's numbers, so it should be closer. And the petition has been circulated and verified by the assessor at 62%. But you're right, we haven't gone out for bid yet. The bid's going to happen in May, and then we'll know.
And actually, the $39,000 is actually, when we approve that, we're actually approving a project that's going to cost the township $280,000.
Yeah, the $39,000 is,
Actually, when we approve this, we're actually approving $280,000 in expenditures.
well, no, it'll have to come back to the board when the roll is spread at the final cost, and then if it passes, it passes. This is just for the, or not just, this is for the engineering design.
It's like throwing the hook out.
It's not throwing a hook out. Again, and that's a detailed estimate has been prepared and approved by the county. We've taken that estimate to the residents. We had an informational meeting. They know the prices.
So when the estimate comes back, we don't have to approve the rest of the funding for the...
When the bids are opened, then you take those numbers and spread the roll if it fits within the project.
But it makes no sense to move forward without...
You can't receive bids unless you design
I
a plan.
understand, but everybody should be cognizant of the fact that when we approve this, we're looking at approving a project that's going to cost the township $280,000. Yes.
No, tonight we're approving the design for $39,000, of which about half will be paid for by the county. Then the bids will be received, and if the prices come in, then the county will pay half, and the assessment will
But
pay half.
if you read all this, when it comes time to cut a check to the county, it says that the county pays like $18,000, the township pays $20,000 some dollars of the engineering fee.
Right.
For a total of $560,000. We have to give them a check for half, which is $280,000.
Right, and that amount will be spread among the residents, I believe, over a 10-year period. It's a special assessment.
I realize that.
Okay.
But we are looking at a project that we're walking into for $280,000. There's no sense in doing, if we're not going to do the project, why are we going to approve the $39,000? It doesn't make sense.
Again, a meeting was held with a petitioner, a resident on Roselawn submitted a petition. And maybe I'm not understanding your question.
Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to move on to other board comments, this back and forth, and I will come back to you.
There's no limit.
I will come back to you.
There's no limit.
I will come back to you.
There's no limit in the board rules. Do not cut me off like you usually do. Do not.
Would you like to keep going?
Yeah, I would like to keep going. There's no such...
Keep going with this internal conversation.
There are no board rules that...
You might clarify a lot of these questions as we go on, so
Well, the other thing
continue
is-
on with your back and forth conversation. I'll give you the respect.
We're looking at approving engineering for a project that's going to cost the township $280,000. Is that correct?
I'm going to say, no, it's not correct.
I'll start answering some of these questions. That is not correct. That it couldn't be more, it couldn't be more wrong.
No, we're gonna spend $280,000. We will get it back over probably a 5 or 6 year period, but we're taking money out of the general fund and we're putting it in an assessment.
The township is not spending money on this project. The assessment district is funding this project, and the county is funding this project.
No,
the township is floating the money. You are correct. We are financing it.
The township is funding.
And we're also being reimbursed for the financing cost. Paul, please.
You keep interrupting me.
Well, answer,
it doesn't say in the board rules, interrupt me.
Ask all your questions, and then let somebody else speak.
Look at
Go. You have the floor, Paul.
I'm trying to
Treasurer LaFatta, you have the floor.
I'm trying to follow the board rules, and you won't let me.
Speak and ask your questions.
But we're amending the assessment district $280,000, which means the availability in the general fund for future capital improvements is going to be less $280,000. Is that correct? Tell me no.
I'm not going to speak to you right now because you're going to yell at me. Ask all your questions and we will respond. Are you done speaking? Okay, any further board comment?
Yes,
Trustee Joseph.
Thank you. I kind of understood where Treasurer LaFatta was coming from in that what I think he was asking, we have a process, we did approve the special assessment district. Sorry?
Well, the petitioner circulated and got, like, I think,
Okay,
62.
sorry. We have a special assessment district.
Created, correct.
That has been created. The project, I'm not exactly sure where the 280, if that's just the ballpark idea that we expect now, that the township could potentially, I think the term was floated, but in essence, we will be paying and then we will be assessing the residents of that district to recoup, whether it's 280 or whatever it is. There's a margin of error, I thought I heard Treasurer LaFatta say, of roughly 5%. And if it exceeds that, then the special district, the district itself, could come back and say, we don't want that much.
Correct.
You know, taxes or assessment being levied, and so that we could potentially be then out the engineering fees.
Correct.
Is the way I understood the protocol. So I think Treasurer LaFatta's concern, given, and I think he mentioned a few projects, you corroborated that with the Sunrise project. If we go out and our engineering estimates are way off, not only do the residents in this district have a problem if they don't want to exceed the 5%, we also are out to 39,000. I guess my question to you is there a procedural way, any other way than what you're proposing to get the numbers? You know, is there any confidence, I guess, as our township engineer in this ballpark idea being within a 5% margin of error? Because I do have a problem with engineering projects that come back that are not good and we end up scrapping the entire project. And I think Treasurer LaFatta mentioned two or three before he was interrupted about where we have gone off track, and that does cost the residents money. And we do have to have some assurances when we send a project out to engineering that we are not just wasting money. And I know that that's his frustration. And so I'm wondering, is there a procedural way?
If I could just take a small bite.
Yeah.
Procedurally, there is no other way other than to prepare engineering plans, design plans, and put it out to bid.
Okay.
We're part of the 2020 county paving program for local streets. Harrison Township, I believe, has 2, and Shelby has 2. In all 3 communities, there's 5 projects. Those communities have to hire their consulting engineers to prepare the bidding plans. Mm-hmm. So that is the process. The county put out a call for projects last October. We met with the residents in January. We had enough interest. We actually brought the petition with us. Dean Babb got a lot of the signatures. The petitioner went out and got 62%, hit the streets. It was brought back here a couple board meetings ago and verified the district with the township. So the next step is for the township now to, have the public hearing, which would be at the 31st board meeting, close the public hearing, and then you go out and receive bids. The bids are going to be received by the county in May, and they want to award in June and start in July. In order for us to have plans ready for bidding in May, we have to do this step now. Otherwise, we would miss the boats. You can't go out for bid without detailed engineering plans.
I understand the process now, so thank you for that.
Okay.
In terms of the number, I heard 280 is the reoccurring number. Is that a ballpark number? Is that a general idea? Is that what the plus or minus 5% kind of area comes in? Where does the 280 come in?
It's a great question. Last year, the estimates were way off for the HMA program. In fact, last year, they bid their projects 3 times before they finally got a number that we could work with Meadow Lane. And if you remember, we actually had to agree to pay a little bit more for Meadow Lane. So for this year's 2020 projects, we used last year's number and added 5 to 10%. So this year's prices should be more in line with what we expect. Last year was a big jump. This year should be more in line with what we expect.
Okay. Just one last question.
Yeah.
From an engineering standpoint, I am satisfied with the process. We can't begin to help the residents in this district until we get it out for the engineering, and I think we're obligated to do that because of they're in a bad way out there. That's why they went forward and agreed to levy themselves because of the roads. I think we have to put that forward, but I'm wondering from a project accountability standpoint, who's responsible if this comes back and it's grossly over and we have to scrap and go back to the residents and say it's significantly more than we thought, and then we're out to $39,000 on the engineering. Who's responsible for that, should that go that route?
Well, the county accepts the estimates and they check the estimates. We prepare the estimates. So I guess, we are responsible.
We as in who in this?
We as in me, and, I prepared the estimate.
So this is your estimate?
This is my estimate.
And you're comfortable with this number?
Yes.
I'm comfortable with you.
I appreciate that. And I do want to make, the county does contribute 50% to these programs. It is a good way to get these local roads paved. In fact, it's probably the only option to get these roads paved at this time.
Provided we get them good numbers. I would agree with you 100%. Right. When we're not accurate, then we run into the problems. And I think the frustration you're seeing from Treasurer LaFata is a continual problem. And I appreciate you stepping up. These are your numbers. If you're owning it, I own it with you. So thank you.
Any further board comment? Before I bring it up to myself, then I'll bring it up to the public, and then I'll go for round 2. The comment was made about prior projects. Very, very happy with all the projects that have been constructed here. They're constructed in the normal course of heavy civil infrastructure projects. Some are not off the ground yet, such as the Weber Paddle Park. And I just want to make sure I commented on that. I, for one, am proud of this team for the amount of projects we have built in the last 3 years, frankly, are more than the projects that were built in the prior 10 years. Just like any item before us, there's strengths, there's weaknesses, there's threats, and there's opportunities. The strength of this specific item is Roselawn will not get repaved without this project this year. It has been selected to the 50-50 subdivision match program from the county, so the county is going to pay for 50% of this project. This is a citizens-initiated project for a special assessment district to repave their road. We are essentially a middleman as a township between the residents and the county. We're fortunate that this project in a very small pool, we're talking in our township alone, maybe 75 miles of subdivision streets need to be replaced. This district was motivated and the county saw the need with this specific project, highlighted by the fact that it was a detour route for the Jefferson Road Bridge. That is probably the biggest reason why this project popped up on the screen, maybe more so than some other projects in other communities. The threats and the problems. The problems are The township does not own these roads. We don't control these roads, and hence we cannot fix roads. They're either MDOT, county, or totally private. In this instance, it's a county road. So the threat is doing nothing, but implementing the request from the residents and not moving forward. They don't get a new road. They don't get the benefits of that new road for the aesthetics of their neighborhood, the property values, whatever that district, and it's over 60% in support. I'm not interested in passing SADs that are real close at 50-50. A vast majority of this street wants this project. We're the middleman. There are some risks, and Treasurer LaFatta, I think, pointed some of them out, and I apologize. What I don't like is I didn't like the conversation here when you know you could have that conversation elsewhere, and we'll have a time for back and forth. The design is also always good. So when we talk about last year's Sunrise project, that was also coupled in with the entire Macomb County Department of Roads, HMA, and asphalt program, which got thrown in twice. And why did it get thrown in? You're suddenly seeing the economy booming and private development going in, road projects and sewer projects and municipalities in the Michigan Department of Transportation trying to repair all of our roads. So you have a very large shortage of material, manpower, and the ability to build these roads. The Macomb County Department of Roads didn't see a 100% increase in their asphalt program, so hence our two projects, Meadow and Sunrise, got thrown in twice. After a lot of negotiations and troubleshooting, they took and shrunk that project down. The result was a brand new Meadow Lane road. Now since then, the Macomb County Department of Roads changed the rules on us a little bit. Moving forward, starting this year, the townships are required to design these projects. The threat laid out, or the risk laid out very clearly, is that if something happens and there's an asphalt shortage, a market shortage, and this project comes 100% over estimate, and the special assessment district does not want to pay that overage, then this project may not happen. However, the design will always be good. The design will be able to be used next year. The design will be able to use the year after. The expediting of this program through the county, I think that is a very limited and very minor risk. And I think the benefit of moving forward and grabbing the 50% from the county far outweighs those risks. So I'm sorry that was a very long comment on this item, but I fully support this item, and it's the best way to get Roselawn repaved for the residents. It's also important to note this is going to be paid for 50% by the residents, 50% by the county. Chesterfield Township, besides the carrying costs and our fees, which are actually covered in the special assessment district cost, the residents will be paying zero. Now that's also very unfortunate because this is a county road. The people living on that road should be paying zero. But the reality is that's not the world we live in right now. The world we live in is the county saying if you want a subdivision category road paved, you're either paying for it 100%, or if you're the fortunate one to get included in this 50-50 program, they will pay for 50%. Now, hopefully this changes in the next year, 2 years, but I'm not optimistic with what I'm seeing coming down from the state. With that, I'm sure I'll see if anyone from the public would like to make any comments on this before I bring it back up to the board for round two, if anybody would like one. Anyone from the public?
I would like round two, I'm sorry.
I'm going to check on the public first.
Okay.
Bring it back up to the board. Trustee Joseph.
Thank you. Mr. Supervisor, I'm appreciative of your comments. I had the bulk of my questions answered when Mr. O'Connor said, these are my numbers and I'll own it. And that's refreshing, and that's what I'm very, very proud of you, Mr. O'Connor, for just stepping forward and saying, look, I'm the engineer, I put the numbers on it, and the talk about other municipalities, grabbing a hold of this, they should, and we should as well. Treasurer LaFatta is right. We should grab a hold of any opportunity that puts us in a position to have the county match 50% to help our residents. But In his presentation, Treasurer LaFata talked about a number of areas where we've come up short in his opinion on the engineering. And Mr. Supervisor, I think this is more directed to you, and I don't want to go askew here, but when Treasurer LaFata was interrupted several times and you said stay on the task, I thought he was, and I thought you were as well when you gave a lovely speech about all of the projects that you've personally, proud and all of that for the last 3 years, and it being greater than the sum of the total of all the other projects over the last 10 years. Nobody gavelled you. You were allowed to say whatever you wanted, and everybody sat here waiting patiently so that we could have an opportunity to rebut. And there's a pattern here. And for most projects, for most things, you walk in, you have your 3 votes, and we know that. But when you start banging on that gavel like a maniac, it's a little upsetting. And I watched Clerk Barry shriek back as you're slamming down that gavel, and I'm seriously afraid that that's going to snap and hurt somebody. You are out of control. You laugh hysterically as people are trying to talk, and you bait them, and you're not helpful. Treasurer LaFata had a series of questions that were on point. You prematurely interrupted him, and it wasn't appropriate. And then you start banging away. It's not right, and you should afford people the opportunity to have a full conversation. Specifically on the willingness to put the number on it, I think the projects, and maybe I'll just wait and save this in my board comments, but I think the propensity to misnumber projects have nothing to do necessarily with the personnel involved. I'm very proud of the work that's done by this team, a word that's used quite a bit. 3 of us on this board don't often get invited to the team, but I am proud of the team that we have here, the people that do the heavy lifting here. The difficulty I have is in the leadership, and it's why I've advocated for each one of these projects to have a person that did exactly what you did tonight. These are my numbers. And if there is a problem down the road, I'm not saying, oh, that O'Connor, all we have is an opportunity when we come up short, if we come up short, is an opportunity to do a little self-reflection and a little introspection on the process. I don't think you're unwilling to do that. I never have thought you were willing to do that. But to pretend that we don't have problems and we're still talking rubber paddle park is really indicative of a change in how we do things. And I am going to really strongly advocate for that. And I'm going to continue to work with Mr. Duchesne because I think procedurally he understands this probably better than most. And it really is a leadership problem, and it's not your problem. So I appreciate you and all the other department heads that get up here trying to present things without adequate leadership. It's difficult, but you do well, and I appreciate you owning this tonight. So thank you.
Thank you. I think I have to make a quick response.
I'm sure that you will.
Then I'll go to Clerk Barry. I know how you feel about my leadership. One comment that is off topic, but I do need to make a comment on it because you say it over and over.
You have the gavel, so do as you will.
Trustee Joseph, would you like to speak some more?
No, I just wanted to remind you that you have the gavel, so you're free to say whatever you like.
Thank you. Here it is, by the way. Are you done? No, you may not.
Because I'm going to chuck it into the lobby if you hand it to me. So
Here you go. Chuck it in the lobby. Go ahead.
thank you.
Director Kersten,
have a meeting.
would you please go get I'll go get the gavel here while we wait. So yes, I know how you feel about my leadership, and it's been pretty evident in the last 2 years when we'll get an opportunity for that. But you keep saying over and over and over again, it's a reoccurring theme for the last 3 years, and that is, you know you've got your 3 votes. This is a very important topic, and now it has a nexus because you brought it up. The ways of the past, the quid pro quos in the counting votes, in the trading votes for non-similar agenda items, is the reason why I decided to attempt to sit in this chair in the first place. Every time you say that, it is offensive at a level that is almost unbelievable. That you actually believe in our stuck in a culture that you think that there's backroom deals and you're counting votes and that ended in 16, at least in this supervisor's chair. So I apologize for having to take a shot at you. I know how you feel about my leadership. I think it's pretty clear how I feel about you. And that comment, if you see, every time you say it, I'm going to respond to it. The only person that does not happen with this guy. Now, can't talk for the rest of the operation of prior boards, but that is the stepchild to corruption, and I am not interested in participating. Clerk Berry.
Mr. Supervisor, I'd like to make a motion to call the question.
Support. Motion by Clerk Berry to call the question, support by Trustee Joseph. Clerk Berry, please call the roll on the call of the question.
Clerk Berry, aye. Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee DeMink.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg. Aye. Treasurer LaFata.
Aye.
Supervisor Acciavatti.
No. Motion to call the question passes. Item 7C, motion by Clerk Berry, support by Trustee Vosberg to approve item 7C as submitted. Clerk Berry, please call the roll.
Clerk Berry, aye. Trustee Vosberg. Aye. Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee DeMink.
Aye.
Treasurer LaFata.
Aye.
Supervisor Acciavatti.
Aye. Motion passes.
Thank you.
After all the drama. Item 7D, approve a recommendation by Public Works to purchase a telematics system for 49 vehicles in various departments from WEX Inc. at a cost of $23.50 per month per vehicle from GL 591-441-801, Water and Sewer 27 vehicles, and 101-265-801, General Fund 22 vehicles. Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Treasurer LaFata, support by Clerk Berry. Discussion. And I don't know if Director Johnson does want to give an overview, but I'll go right up to Trustee Vosberg.
Thank you. Looking this over, I'm wondering what problem are we trying to solve? Do we have a problem that we need to have the system, so we're trying to solve it?
Not necessarily. What it's supposed to do is just help with getting a better track of the maintenance of our fleet. Trying to make sure, a lot of times with our fleet, the fleet manager was saying that he can keep track of a lot of the vehicles. A lot of times with the codes will appear. He can get access to those, get trucks into service sooner, things of that nature. It will actually tie to our current WEX fleet card system, so he can not only track the usage with the vehicles, the mileage, things of that nature. It also has a capability, because it has the GPS, if perhaps a resident calls and says that, we were speeding down a road at X amount of miles an hour, we could actually go and say, yes, we were, no, we weren't, things of that nature. We could prove that out with this software. Not necessarily, we don't really get those calls at all, but it could do things like that. But the main thing is more of the maintenance of the fleet, keeping track of that, and just making sure that we're being as efficient as possible with our vehicles, and making sure we can improve our turnover, things of that nature.
Okay, how did we do that before? How will this make that process different?
Well, what we did before was just kind of monitor the tracking of how much money we're spending on the vehicles through maintenance, and determining based on that cost, do we dump more money into that vehicle, or do we decide to, transition to a new vehicle from that one? That was kind of the initial process. So if we're having issues, we take it in. Now that we have Jeremy, who's our fleet manager, we take it to him. He can assess the vehicle, see what needs to be done. We've gotten a lot of thorough data from him. It's been great having him around to see what needs to be repaired in our vehicles. And we've been coming to the conclusion a lot more of our vehicles need repair much sooner than we think. So he said this could, his recommendation too was it could potentially help improve his record keeping in terms of what could be going on with the vehicles as well.
Right. Was he involved in the process?
Yes, he was.
Picking this WEX, that's the same as the fuel system?
Yes, WEX is the same company. And the GeoTab, which is the software program they use, it is similar. The police just upgraded their system to that, or they've moved to that system, so it'll be matching what they have as well. And it will actually work with our credit card system that we have, so it'll integrate all that data, and it can be pooled all together as one data set.
Then my last question is, there's a point on productivity, the driver, whoever's operating, the operator of the vehicle, their productivity, has there been an issue with that needs to be monitored?
I haven't felt there was necessarily a productivity issue. I know with our internal operations, we do focus really hard on any time we do any appointments that we make sure we put them in the same, so they're not driving back and forth from one township to the side of the other. We try to put them in the same area as best we can. Obviously, as final bills or things like that come in on a daily basis, it's not always the case because those meetings kind of pop up day of or day before, so we got to kind of fit them as need be, so it's not always a perfect situation. But a lot of our mapping is based on residents' availability and for our appointment scheduling to kind of fit the best way we can.
Right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Trustee Domingue.
So if truck number 001 needs a brake job, this thing isn't going to tell you that, correct? It's got to be the operator that's going to tell you.
Correct.
Hey, truck 001 needs brakes, okay.
Correct.
So right now, when we go fuel up a truck, how this card system works, they punch it in, they have to punch in the mileage and the vehicle number. Correct, okay. And that's my thing, has there been a problem with employees trying to skirt the system? I'm going to come right out and ask you, is there a problem with township employees trying to skirt the system?
Not to my knowledge. Anytime, I know Director Coddington and myself, anytime one of our employees, if we would have an issue, we would talk to them, but we have not had any kind of issue where it would, it's anything egregious to where it would warrant them thinking that they're driving around the township, just lollygagging, anything of that nature.
And all of our township vehicles are, I think all they're yellow, aren't they? Maybe there's a couple green ones or something like that, correct?
Yeah,
they're all well marked and they all have a truck number on them, correct?
Yeah, they'll all have a logo and a number. They're not all going to be, depending on when we get our vehicles, some are going to be white now. We try to get them all yellow, but if it comes white, we're not going to spend the extra money on painting it. We're just going to keep that money, use it for other things than just a
But
paint
they all
job.
have a large placard,
Absolutely.
Chesterfield, and a vehicle number that's quite visible.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Treasurer LaFata.
Maybe to answer some of your, one of your questions, Scott, I look at every utility invoice that comes in monthly, including all the WEX fuel bills. If you look at some of the vehicles, if you look at the number of gallons they take on and the time period that they take them on in, some of the township vehicles probably drive over 100 miles a day. If you look at a township that's 5.4 miles from one end to the other, it's hard to explain. Having this tracking system on there might explain why these miles and why the number of gallons of gasoline is being used. Because right now, when you look at somebody filling a 30 or 28 gallon tank on a pickup truck every other day, sometimes doesn't really make a lot of sense, and there's no way to really explain. This will help understand. Could be we have an engine in it. Could be that truck's got an engine that burns oil. We should get rid of it. Right. Or burns gasoline. But there's some unanswered questions when you look at the utility bills and you look at the, like I said, the township 5.4 miles from one end to the other. This will help resolve any of those issues.
Yep. And that can go both ways. I mean, we read meters on a monthly basis. We will have vans that will be driving around the township. We have inspectors we have 2 inspectors. We have multiple projects going on, so they're, bouncing from job to job, checking things out. So that's going to happen. We also have, if we ever have a water break or an issue, we might have a truck sitting right on the side of the road for 6 hours because it has to have the hazards and the flashers on while it's sitting there. It has to run to keep the battery, all that stuff from it dying on the side of the road. So we're going to have some extremes. I would agree with Paul, it shouldn't be happening on a daily basis, but even our meter vans driving on a regular basis to, do a lot of appointments, things of that nature.
Trustee Joseph.
Thank you. Just I wanted to, I didn't have a comment, but I heard Trustee Domingue, and he asked about on the up and up, or, that kind of thing in terms of, it's a great question because it dovetails into Treasurer LaFata's question or comment about effective utilization of, mileage and fuel and all of these things, which I don't know where the feedback is coming from.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think that did it. Thank you. the ability to be accountable. And I know we've gone back as far as the water and sewer rate advisory, and you look at all of the things that go into cost, and there's a lot of overlap in the water department and in the facilities and operations, and so all of these things have such impact that it is very appropriate to get accountability here. I think this idea does exactly that. So I'm not sure whose idea it was, but nice job on that, bringing it to the board.
Any further comments on board? Clerk Barry.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. The way that I read this information, it looks to me like this is going to cost, it's an annual subscription, correct?
Yes, so so just to give clarification on that, so it's going to start at $23.50 a month because that initial upfront cost at a 0% interest loan, they're basically allowing us to pay monthly for it as opposed to a one lump sum. So it'll be $23.50 monthly for 3 years, and it goes down to $19.95.
Okay, so how long are we committed to on this? Are we committed to 3 years, or after a year we decide, this isn't paying off, the return on investment is not significant enough, we could cancel?
Yeah, it's like a year-by-year basis, yeah.
Okay, very good. So the way that I see this item, and the reason why I'm going to support it, is that it looks like it's probably going to run us roughly about $20,000, at least for the first year, with the initial cost and then the monthly fees. Is that about right? I'm ballparking it somewhere in the $20,000 range.
We're looking at like $11.50 times 12. So you'd use that $6,000 over a 3-year period if we did it that way. So
okay, plus that, yeah.
Yeah.
So and the value of the fleet, I'm thinking, is somewhere probably 50 vehicles, even on an average value of $20,000 per vehicle is probably $1 million investment or $1 million asset. So to invest, even if it's $15,000, $20,000 for a year, to ensure the health of a $1 million investment, I think is very reasonable. And I think it makes a lot of sense. Being in the automotive industry, automotive service particularly, in my family business for over a decade, I understand the benefit of that. And I think that it makes sense from a financial perspective as well. So I will be interested to hear from the department at some point in another year as to whether or not we want to continue, if we are actually realizing a return on that investment. I suspect that we will, but I would definitely like to see that, see what the numbers look like after a year to determine if we'd like to continue. Thank you.
I'm going to come up to me before we go to round two. I do have reservations with this program. I think Trustee Vosberg asked, what's the purpose? And looking at, again, the strengths and weaknesses and threats and opportunities, it clearly could improve the efficiency of our fleet. It clearly could improve safety. If there's an accident or a speeding situation, all that information could help. It could actually eliminate a car in our fleet and show that this vehicle is not being utilized properly. The 3-year service contract, the way I read it was we are locked in for 3 years. I think we could cancel that first year, but we are paying, I think you're going to have to pay the rest of the material if we did cancel. There are some major or some potential weaknesses as well. Some potential abuse. I also have some personal experience with this very similar product. When WEX got brought to this board 3 years ago to move us out of the fuel business and into the fuel card situation that worked really good, we had very big discussions on this at that point. And the team at that point weighed the benefits and the potential cost at $13,000 a year approximately, and the potential benefits. It was determined that it just didn't work that good. In my own experience, my prior life, we did have a very similar product for a different reason. It was a profit-driven type reason, and after 1 year of dealing with the maintenance and the data and trying to actually sort it out, what we found out was we don't need nowhere near this amount, and it's more headache than good. So I would have been way more comfortable with a pilot on the vehicles that we know could potentially, we know, will benefit from this versus a full-blown jump in with both feet. So as is, I do not believe I'm going to be supporting this item. I would love to see a smaller version in a pilot before we jump in with both feet. It's very easy to drive over 100 miles in this township. Last year during the high water, and I have a personal vehicle I drove, there was one year I put 156 miles on down every single side street. So that does happen, and there is reasons for it. The reason for this product should be what I stated, which is trying to find most efficient use of the vehicle, and I don't think it should be used in any way, shape, or form to check up or deal with our employees, because I do not believe there are any issues on that level. So for that purpose, the way it's written, unless it gets tabled and scaled down, I won't be supporting it. Trustee DeMink.
You know, looking at this, and I know what Director Kersten deals with on the police cars and fire trucks, I call an AVL system, Advanced Vehicle Locator. Been familiar with it for all my years in public service. I can see it in police cars, fire trucks, know where everybody's at, where the guys are at. I don't really like going into it with 49 vehicles before the supervisor made his comments. That would be my thing. I'd say let's try it, maybe with 10 or 15 vehicles to start for a year. If we like what it does, then move on to the full fleet. But to jump in with all of our vehicles at first, I don't agree with this. I would say start with a smaller program. If we like it after a year, jump in. But that's my thoughts. Everybody has the right to their own opinion. Thank you.
Any comments from the public on this item before we come back up here again if there's another round? Anybody else from the board? Treasurer LaFata.
Actually, there is data available that can be used to benchmark whether this is a good thing or a bad thing. I would... I would think that our WEX fuel bills, once we install these, will probably go down considerably. We're also going to find out that we do have vehicles that we don't drive enough, that we probably don't need. This may be a 3-year program, but I think the township needs to experience it, because if you look at the WEX fuel bills, I think what we're going to save in fuel is going to be realized. I know Trustee DeMink said that we have yellow vehicles, but there are sometimes I get behind these yellow vehicles and I follow them, and they just don't go from point A to point B. And sometimes I wonder why. I scratch my head and I just go on my way. This is a way to make sure that we're efficient. We go from point A to point B. We don't burn any more gas, burn any more tires, have any more brake jobs than we need to, because we're going to be efficient. We're going to know that we should be going to from point A to point B, because it's being tracked. This is, unfortunately, it's a tool, but it's a tool to be more efficient. In the long run, it's a tool to save money.
Thank you. Any further comments from the board? We have a motion by Clerk Berry, supported by Treasurer LaFata, to approve item 7D as submitted. Clerk Berry, please call the roll.
Treasurer LaFata.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, aye. Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee DeMink.
No.
Trustee Vosburgh. No. Supervisor Acciavatti.
No. Item 7D passes. Item 7E, approve a request by Public Works to purchase 2 3/4-ton GMC 2500 trucks from Todd Wetzel Buick GMC at a total cost of $74,250 from GL 590000148.
So moved.
Motion by trustee. Motion by trustee DeMink, support by trustee Vosburgh. Mr. Johnson is here. If you have any questions, go. Maybe a quick.
Yep, we just have a couple more vehicles that are at the end, very much at the end of their life, becoming unsafe, so we want to replace those trucks with these ones to keep our employees safe. So any questions? Yeah.
Questions from the board? Comments from the public? Maybe our next thing of live streaming will be sending in comments online.
And there are no snow plows, yes. There are no snow plows on these trucks.
Seeing no further comments from the board or the public, we have a motion by Trustee Demink, support by Trustee Vosberg to approve item 7E as submitted. Clerk Berry, please call the roll.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Treasurer LaFata.
Aye.
Supervisor Acciavatti.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Item 7F, approve a request by the Building Department to adopt Resolution 2020-07, a resolution approving sidewalk deferral administrative review fee. I'll make a motion to approve as stated.
Support.
Motion by Supervisor Acciavatti, support by Trustee Vosberg. Mr. DeMaster, or Director DeMaster is here. Maybe quick overview.
If you have any questions.
Any questions for Director DeMaster?
I do.
Oh, Clerk Berry.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Gary, very quickly, I'm always hesitant to support, and I know you're shaking your head because we've been here together before, haven't we?
Agreed.
I'm always hesitant to endorse new fees or raising fees on residents or applicants for administrative purposes. And I see that the administrative fee that we are looking to impose, this is a new fee on the sidewalk deferral program?
On the new sidewalk deferral program, yes.
So it is a new program, so this is so that we can clarify for the public, this is a new program, and the corresponding fee that we are asking to charge for administrative purposes is simply to reimburse essentially Chesterfield Township for what it is going to cost us to facilitate it. Is that correct?
That is absolutely correct.
And we are not charging any more, and it is completely justifiable with regards to the resources, both human resource as well as physical resources that need to be expended in order to support this. Is that correct?
That is absolutely correct.
Thank you.
If I could, this is, yes, it's a new mechanism to deal with this deferment fee. It's a result from the November change to our sidewalk program. So a problem we're trying to alleviate is forcing sidewalks or having to go through a long process to not put a sidewalk to nowhere, which they're required to do so prior to this, and now this gives them an option to not do that. And it's kind of like the second step of what we did in November,
Right.
changing our sidewalk ordinance.
Yeah, on the ordinance, it states that the payment of any fees as may be established by resolution of the Township Board, and that's what this is. It's the last part of enacting that program.
Any further questions from the board? Comments from the public? For a minute there, I thought you had a question, but you're not allowed to ask a question. Motion by Supervisor Acciavatti, support by Trustee Vosberg to approve item 7F as submitted. Clerk Berry, please call the roll.
Supervisor Acciavatti.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Treasurer LaFata.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Item 7G, consider a request by the Building Department to approve the introduction and first publication of ordinance number 81, amending the Chesterfield Township Fire Prevention Code, being Chesterfield Township Ordinance number 77 as amended, codified at Article 2, Fire Prevention Code, Chapter 38, Fire Prevention and Protection, Section 3866 through 3884 in the Chesterfield Township Code of Ordinances to add Section 2885 and repeal any and all ordinances or resolutions in conflict therewith.
So moved.
Thank you. I don't want to say that again. Motion by Trustee Demink.
Second.
Second by Clerk Berry. Just questions for Mr. DeMaster. Trustee Vosberg.
Thank you. What are we, again, what is this trying to accomplish? What are we trying to do to help?
This is, we have fire inspectors now, and they're enforcing the International Fire Code, and the people who don't take the list and do what they're supposed to do, this is just the mechanism to enforce it. Instead of creating another department, we already have the department. Brad and I have been talking together, and this is the best way and the best method to enforce the fire code, just as we enforce electrical, mechanical, building.
Thank
To
you.
the same code enforcement department.
Thank you.
Instead of creating a new department, it kind of stays in one spot.
Any further comments from the board? Comments from the public today? Motion by Clerk Berry, support by Trustee, motion by Trustee Demink, support by Clerk Berry to approve item 7G as submitted. Clerk Berry, please call the roll.
Trustee Demink. Aye. Clerk Berry, aye. Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Treasurer LaFata.
Aye.
Supervisor Acciavatti.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for your help, Michelle.
Item 7H, approve the request from the Treasurer's Office to collect 50% of the New Haven School District 2020 tax levy in the summer and adopt Resolution 2020-08.
Motion to approve is stated.
Motion by Clerk Berry.
Support.
Support by Treasurer LaFata. Discussion. Comments from the public? Oh, hi.
This was just the last of our requests to collect summer school tax. For some reason, their letter got lost, so this is the last of the school districts we collect in the summer. And it's only 50%. They do 50/50.
Mandatory collection by pursuant to statute.
Yeah.
We kind of have to
Yes.
do this.
Yes,
and
yeah.
is
And
it
we
this-
are required by statute to approve the resolution every year.
Thank you. Any comments from the board or from the public? Motion by Clerk Berry, support by Treasurer LaFata, combination you don't see very often, to approve item 7H as submitted. Clerk Berry, please call the roll.
Clerk Berry, aye. Treasurer LaFata.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Demink. Aye. Supervisor Acciavatti.
Aye. Motion passes. No addendum tonight. Moving on to public comment. If there are any public comment, please come to the podium. Make sure the green button is on, which it is right now, and you have 5 minutes to speak on any agenda item.
My name's Joe Keatich. I live on Sutton. It's rather ironic what I've prepared to talk about tonight. Basically came out from the previous meeting, which had to do with the cell tower and the approval of having the F-35s introduced to Chesterfield. It was really apparent, became apparent over time that at the meeting, particularly in the F-35s, that the board is divided. You get 3 members of the board, Trustee Anderson, Trustee Joseph, and Treasurer LaFata, basically trying to present what they think is a fair thing and question what is going on. And you have the other 4, Trustee Demink, Trustee Vosberg, Clerk Berry, and Supervisor Acciavatti taking a stand. And it seems that the 3, that John with Supervisor Acciavatti, basically don't really, in a lot of instances, know what they're voting for, but just know that they're here to vote for Supervisor Acciavatti. As I said last week, it was really disturbing to see where it went. And basically, their call saying, we don't have to send out that memorandum now, there's no need for it. They had been attending the meeting at Selfridge over this thing, and they said the way this thing should go, and to hold back and let the course of events take place, let the Air Force come in, introduce the F-35s, bring the public that's going to be involved in it, have a chance to see how it's going to affect them, and the 4 of you just disregarded that. It's like you had the right to say what they wanted to hear and what they would be. Clerk Berry's comment about the government would be responsible for any damage that the government would cause by bringing those things. In other words, making those homes non-livable because of the noise, was like, I don't care about the public. I just want to get my name out there because it's a good political side to be on. And it's really become an issue as I see this whole board just is formed, and you had a good observation of what happened with the first thing today, the way we got into it, not we, but you got into it over certain things. And not only did the people squabble between each other, but it's really disturbing when Treasurer Lefata is bringing something up on an issue and see Trustee Vosford sit there and roll her eyes like she's putting up with some child or something. It's disrespectful, and it shows that you don't really care to do your job. You just want to get here and do what you want to do, and that's to get done what Supervisor Acciavatti gets done. The other issue that went the same way last time was the issue over the cell tower. Everybody here was, at that side anyway, was willing to get back into it, go into the cell tower, find out where the problems are, get it rescinded, and basically what came out that there was a lapse in procedure and that procedures weren't followed. And when it came to that, Supervisor Acciavatti was saying, well, that's because, was it oversight? I was busy on these other things and everything. But nobody took a stand and say we should rescind this because of that. And it basically went back to, instead of you taking care of the problem, it was your problem, it went back to the Planning Commission. That kind of abdicated what you were supposed to do, and it also put the onus back on the Planning Commission. Now, you can take credit for all you want to do around here, but you should live up to your mistakes and sort them out and take care of them without having to try to, keep Supervisor Acciavatti's reputation intact.
We've got to wrap it up. You're over 5 minutes.
Okay, well, let me just consider, the other thing that...
You got about 5, I'm going to give you 5 seconds. Go.
Okay. The other thing is, I heard from a letter Paul put out that when you went into closed session over the cell tower, that you, Trustee Vosford, called for a meeting in closed session that had nothing to do with it.
We're way over 5 minutes now. We're approaching 6. Thank you so much.
Maybe somebody else complete it. But
thank you so much.
You illegally called for a meeting.
It's our board rules. Unless if this board wants to vote to extend over 5 minutes, I got to cut you off. Thank you, Mr. Kadich. Thank you, Mr. Kadich. Any further board comments? And you know that the board can always do that. You can make a motion to extend board minutes over 5 minutes, or board...
Mr. Supervisor?
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion tonight to allow Mr. Kadich additional time to finish.
It'd be a motion to suspend the rules. You only want... Okay, go ahead with your motion.
Motion to suspend the rules tonight, the 5-minute rule tonight only for the public comments.
How much would you like to expend it?
4 minutes, 3 minutes, 3 minutes. 3
Another
additional minutes.
Okay, so that would give him an extra 2 minutes. Motion by Trustee Anderson to extend Mr. Kadich's rights only to speak during public comments for an additional 3 minutes. Is there support?
Mr. Supervisor, just to offer a...
Motion dies for lack of support?
Support, sorry. I know that you're not a parliamentarian, so I'd like to offer a friendly amendment to the motion maker. Given the fact that we have about 4 people in the audience that seem interested in speaking, I'd like Mr. Anderson to amend his motion to allow 3 additional minutes for any resident that would like to go a total of 8 minutes.
So moved.
Motion by Trustee Anderson, support by Trustee Joseph to suspend the rules and extend the time the public can speak to 8 minutes tonight. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Demink.
No.
Trustee Vosberg.
No.
Treasurer Lefata.
Yes.
Supervisor Acciavatti.
No.
Clerk Barry, no.
Motion fails. Any further public comment? Let's bring it up to the board. Trustee Joseph.
I think we spent more time debating the motion to allow Mr. Kadich to speak than we would have if we just would have allowed him to finish his 30 seconds, but that's the way it goes. And I think if you had had comments that were more flattering, you probably would have gotten a half an hour, but it's not the way it goes. With regard to the debate that we had tonight, could somebody turn the microphone at the podium? I think that's the feedback hole there. Thank you, Trustee Domingue. The difficulty that we had on the board meeting was really not about the agenda item per se or the engineering costs. It really had to do with the procedural and how we get along here. There is, first and foremost, I want to make it very clear, and I'll speak more about this in my closing remarks, there is absolutely zero personal animosity that I feel towards anybody on this board. In fact, I have great friendships with a number of people on this board. Clerk Barry and I have had some very, very spirited discussions. And last week, when I had a personal problem, I was able to call upon her. And without question, she was there to support me and my family. Trustee Domingue, same way. Trustee Anderson, Treasurer LaFata. It goes across the board. I think there's admiration and respect for everybody on this board, mutually and individually. It's not about a personal attack. When I point out deficiencies in leadership, it's not the individual. It's self-evident. It is the administering of the day-to-day operations in the township, and I don't fault the supervisor personally. It's the structure. It's the way that our government is set up. Every one of these department heads runs the risk of feeling like they're going to be in the combine when they come to that podium because issues become political. And Mr. Case's comments about the F-35 and Veterans Day and anything else, there's no doubt there's political decisions being made up here all the time. And to spare the department heads, that level of difficulty and uncertainty is the reason that I have been working on and will present to the board a concept of a township superintendent. It's time, it's way past time, because otherwise you have the day-to-day operations being handled by somebody who is, really conflicted. There's a lot of political decisions that are being made, and it makes sense to allow those political decisions to go somewhere else and allow a township superintendent to come to the board and present ideas to the full board, not necessarily three board members who might be more advantageously listening to an idea. That's the problem. I was not in any way alleging any kind of corruption when I talked about there seems to be a 4-3 vote pattern. It's simply this. Supervisors here, there's nothing wrong. There's absolutely nothing wrong with trying to gain support for a particular motion or an idea that you have. You should be looking to talk to your fellow board members, and you do have to count to 4 in order to get a motion passed. Myself, and I won't speak for Trustee Anderson or Treasurer LaFata, when we pointed out that we were concerned about certain things very early on, those discussions ended with us. That's just that simple. They just ended with us. So it's not that I'm alleging that anybody is, comes here with their, mind made up, and I wouldn't go so far as to say some of the things that were brought by one of the speakers. But it certainly is not difficult to see that a lot of our board ends with 4-3 votes. You can, get all upset and yell and bang the gavel and all, but that's what happens. It's a 4-3 deal. And I'm just going to simply come forward. I'm going to try my best not to raise my voice. I'm not going to call anybody names. I'm not going to be personal. I talked about leadership, and the response was to talk about me. And that's typically how it goes. It's probably how it'll go tonight. There'll be a talk about integrity and elections and all of these things. It's a dismissive tone that happens at the conclusion of every one of these board meetings. If you differ, you must be motivated by politics or your integrity is in question and so forth. There's nothing further from the truth. The simple fact of the matter is I see things differently on this board. I voice those very strongly. Treasurer LaFata is the same way. Tonight, he started to lay out his argument for why a particular agenda item didn't make sense to him, and he wanted to make sure safeguards were in place, and he was interrupted, and he's interrupted on a regular basis. It's just how he's treated. When he responded to the being interrupted, he's gavelled. He's gavelled in a very, it's out of control, and the behavior when you're trying to run a board meeting should be done on a somewhat dispassionate way. You can't be screaming at people and banging and yelling, and this is the behavior that is very, very off-putting. You know, to be brought so easily to a full froth and start yelling and baiting, it's uncalled for. It doesn't need to happen, but it does happen quite often. Again, the voters decide every 4 years. That's not my call, that's just an opinion. The voters decide every 4 years, but what we should bring to the voters is good government. And so a township superintendent really eliminates a lot of this nonsense. Speaking of a specific issue that was very contentious 2 weeks ago, I want to just touch upon the cell tower issue. The board did get it wrong. The board absolutely got it wrong. When we approved the cell tower in July, we violated our board rules, and the board rules called for a hearing. The hearing should have involved the public, and specifically the public in that neighborhood who would be living in the shadow of that tower, and it didn't happen. The board had an opportunity to review it, and I asked the planning department when it came to the planning commission to review it, to table it, to allow the board to get another look at that and make sure that we got it right. We had a deliberative process. It didn't go my way. It was 4-3, and that was okay. But then when it went back to the planning commission and the board came in, the residents came in, what was a problem was how we got here to begin with, and that was the cell tower people engaged the supervisor, and I believe the supervisor and the clerk. I think a more deliberative discussion, a more free discussion with the board members could have alleviated that problem. It didn't happen that way, and the deal was kind of put together between the supervisor and the cell tower company. It got before the board, and that's just a fact. The planning commission meeting on that Tuesday, for me personally, presented a great challenge. The afternoon of the 18th, I unfortunately had to deal with a family emergency. My daughter was taken to the hospital by ambulance. I was literally in the emergency room with my daughter, and there were, I knew to be over 100 people here who really felt that their lives would be greatly impacted. And I had worked very hard with our township attorney and some board members, and I really felt that my presence needed to be at that planning commission meeting. My daughter was in a very safe and stable place, and I said to my wife, I'm going to go to the township, I'm going to go to this meeting, and then I'm going to come back. And she said, I wish you would, because there's nothing we can do right now, and I wish you would. And I came to the board meeting, the planning commission meeting, and we held that agenda item fairly close to the top. And I was very proud of the commission members that I served with. We got the decision that was right for the residents, and then I asked the chairman of the planning commission to be excused so that I could return to the hospital and be with my daughter. Sadly, she's been in the hospital all week, was not released from care until this afternoon. And I really didn't come here tonight prepared to do battle and go into, the way that we did. Unfortunately, I care about this township greatly, and it was another spirited night. But on a personal note, I felt very proud and very appreciative to receive text messages and calls from members of this board that were there for me, and they support me. And it is not about personalities, and I wish we would get away from personalities, and I wish we could conduct meetings in a dispassionate way that is just really about facts and procedures and follow that protocol, because I think we could do a lot better for our residents if we stop the personal things. Again, I'm also very, very appreciative. I did make an announcement at that planning meeting last Tuesday that I needed to leave to care for my daughter. And I've heard from over 24 residents who were there who emailed me to say, not thanks for helping us with the cell tower, but Mr. Joseph, I hope your daughter's okay. And it meant the world to me, and I really do appreciate that. And I'd like to say thank you to every individual who reached out to me. My daughter's fine, and I really do think that the outpouring of love and support is exactly why I ran for office, and it's exactly why I'm very proud to live in this community. So I'm very grateful and very thankful, including a visit from Treasurer LaFata on Sunday, just to drop off some treats for her. And that's the kind of people we work and serve with here in this township. So thank you to everybody who sent a well wish, and to the board. I very much appreciate it. Thank you.
Trustee Anderson.
Thank you. Mr. Kadish, I appreciate your thoughtful, thought-provoking comments tonight. This board in the past on several occasions has set aside, a majority has set aside its guidelines, you know, as far as limits go, Open Meetings Act, when it comes to the night of the meeting to possibly hire additional department heads. No problem getting the 4 votes to set aside the guideline for that. Perhaps they're standing behind that 4 to 3, whatever it is, a limit. They didn't want to hear what you had to talk about. But thank you, sir, for being courageous. I'd also like to welcome the 7 new members to our Public Safety Department. Thank you.
Trustee DeMink.
I'd also like to welcome the 7 new members between the Police and Fire Department. Welcome to Chesterfield. I wish you the best. Any better? Also, last week, Wednesday, at the Library Board meeting, which I'm a liaison to and I'm not voting, the members of the Library Board voted to put a millage on the August 4th primary. It has not come to the board yet, but they voted without not knowing what the millage is going to be. Not knowing what the millage is going to be, moved to ask for a vote on August 4th at the primary. I don't know why it's not turning off.
Wait, turn it.
So that's going to go on the August 4th. It'll come to the board at some point when Director Madson forwards it to us. It'll be up to the residents at that time. Next, thanks to the board members for 2 weeks ago when I had no voice, Kathy for asking questions, and Clerk Perry and the rest of the board allowing me to vote my thumbs up or thumbs down. With regards to the F-35s, I'm almost 62 years old and I've lived in this township my entire life. I grew up at 21 Mile 984 and listened to the fighter jets all my life. I lived in a house without air conditioning with my parents and my sister. Jet noise, it comes and it goes. I remember at 9/11, I was at the county at the time when 9/11 happened, blocking off Hall Road and getting fighter pilots on the base. And how many of us that lived around here heard jet fighters taking off constantly for several weeks and there was no air traffic. And those guys are taking off of that base and lighting their afterburners and going to wherever they had to get to quick to protect the country. I stand by the way I voted for the F-35s because I believe Selfridge is a great base. I do not want to see joint use, and I believe the F-35s would be an asset. I'm only supporting it because I'd like to see Macomb County get it. Are we going to get it? Who knows? It's up to the guys in Washington, D.C., it's up to the president, it's up to a bunch of generals that got more stars than we'll ever be able to count. But I voted on what I felt. I know quite a few members in the base community council, what they feel for the base and how they support it in area businesses. I also attend a lot of county things and know a lot of state representatives and senators and know what their feeling is. And I feel the same way they do. So the way I voted on for the F-35s for this resolution is I stand by it. I didn't say much last week because I couldn't talk. But that's what I did. I voted for the way I felt and from the information I gathered. I can sit up here and people will agree with what I do and don't agree with what I do. That's part of the process up here. You can vote me in, you can vote me out. I do the best I can. I'm not perfect. But I do what I see is right. I think the employees know who I am. They see me here just like they see other members on this board. That's the way I am. If you don't like me for the way I am, so be it. You can vote me out, you can vote me in. I roll with the dice. I'm not going to lose any sleep over it. Thank you.
Trustee Vosberg.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I don't have any further comments. Thank you.
Treasurer LaFata.
The assessment district and the $39,000 for the engineering fees, my goal was to inspire the township to be more transparent so that the residents know that their money is being used for something and there is a risk. It's not a matter of not wanting to fix the roads. Really, we're spending the township's money, it's coming out of the general fund. When it comes out of the general fund, that means that money's not available to spend. And currently, I think we're looking at about $13 million worth of capital improvements sitting on our supervisor's wall. That's one of the reasons why I bring this up. Everybody should be cognizant of what we're spending. If you look at our future budget for our general ledger accounts, you're going to see that there's brackets around them in the coming years. Also, after last week's meeting that lasted till after midnight, I went home on my own time and I penned a letter of apology to the residents. I took it to Staples and I had 40 copies made at my own expense, and I passed it out at the Planning Commission, and I apologized to the residents for what went on at last board meeting. One of the residents looked at what I wrote, and I mentioned that coming out of the closed session was an issue that wasn't relevant to the privileged information that we were in discussion with our legal counsel, and that was the discussion of township process and procedures, which requires an open meeting. And that's what Mr. Kadish caught on to, and he didn't have enough time to spit out. But there's a strong possibility that the Open Meetings Act was violated in our last closed session, and that's what Mr. Kadish was trying to say. That's what he asked me previously before this meeting, and there's a good chance that it was, because it was brought up by Trustee Vosberg. It was debated until it was agreed upon by some of the people there that were present, that if a process and procedure is ignored, then we just understand that it wasn't in play. I don't know why it was in discussion there, but that wasn't the privilege that we went in there for. Thank you.
Clerk Barry.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I appreciate that. I'm going to keep my comments relatively brief tonight. And I want to try to get the reverb from coming back here. Well, Joe, we finally have live streaming after 3 or 4 years, right? I think he and I don't agree on much, but we agreed on live streaming. So I think glad that we finally have live streaming, and we successfully live streamed our first meeting today. So I was pleased that we were able to do that. Secondly, I'd like to point out as well that Trustee Joseph's correct, that even though we have differences of opinions on the board, we still have, I think, a genuine respect for each other here. And even though it gets spirited and sometimes a little bit spicy at times, that doesn't mean that we don't support each other personally. All of us share the human condition the same, and we all understand that. As far as how votes take place on the board, I was here along with a couple of my colleagues during a very dark period in the township's history, where we did see corruption live and up in person, and that was very unfortunate, but I think we have moved past. To suggest that anyone on this board casts a vote to make a horse trade, to support any particular individual for political gain, or any of the other unsavory type of reasons that I saw, again, some of us saw up close and personal several years ago. I don't see that here. And if I did, I'd be the first person to say it. But to suggest it with the individuals that are here, yes, they're very passionate about how they believe. Yes, we have very different opinions on things, even though we're all Republicans, right? Which I'm sure Joe would like to change, right? A little bit. That's okay. But to suggest that for any of the individuals sitting here, I do not know any individual on this board. I think that is an insult to any one of them, because I don't know anyone here As much as I may disagree with any one of them, none of them have that kind of motivation. I can assure you of that, because I've seen it, and it's not here. So I just wanted to make that clear. My vote is my own. I invest it to the greatest return on investment for our residents, for our taxpayers, for the people that do business here. My goal is always to see the highest value of service at the lowest possible cost. That's how I cast my vote, for no other reason and with no other motivation. None. So I would like, though, to address one concern, and that is because I'm very familiar with the Open Meetings Act, and of course, I certainly do not want to violate any of the covenants of the closed session. I would simply like to ask the attorney if he believes that there was any violation of the Open Meetings Act during the last closed session.
I'll try. I was in the closed session, and it was because of a written legal opinion that I had presented to the board. The discussion of that written legal opinion was specifically allowed under the Open Meetings Act, and as the board will recall, when we were discussing an item that I thought was bordering on material that was not protected by the closed session provisions of the Open Meetings Act, I indicated that, and the meeting ended. So I am satisfied that there was no Open Meetings Act violations. And again, I specifically called it out at the time, so.
Thank you.
Thank you. A couple quotes from some of the previous board members that spoke. One started by saying, "This shouldn't be personal attacks, and we're going to stay calm, and this isn't personal. This is professional." And then I did write down some of the direct quotes. One was, to be brought so easily to full froth. Another one was, political decisions are made up here all the time. This one was my favorite because it was an outright lie. The deal was put together between the supervisor and the cell tower company. And then he follows it up with ending that very passionate speech by talking about leadership of, obviously, the supervisor. He doesn't call me the supervisor. So I'll say the trustee from a certain part of town. And then he ends with, it'd be nice if we could get away from personal things. So you can say that you want to be cordial and you could be calm, and then you take attacks by the ridiculous statements and outright lies, and you see right through it. The deal was put together between the supervisor and the cell tower company, direct quote. The leader on this issue is our planning liaison consultant. Watch the meeting from July 23rd. Our consultant had total control over this issue. Brought up the visual, brought up the location, sold it as hard as you could possibly sell it. And that's what you expect out of a planning commission liaison. Very proud that he did that. He had complete control of this issue. What you saw with the cell tower, and I was careful not to talk about this during the supervisor report, because this isn't my report. That doesn't belong there. It belonged with planning commission, because that part of the agenda is for your reports of what you do. What you saw with the cell tower was the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. You have a planning commission issue that the board has no involvement with. The sheer fact, and I can speak a little more freely now, the sheer fact that issue was in front of this board was problematic on very, very high levels. It is not over yet. There are options moving forward there. One of the other quotes were, political decisions are made up here all the time. I agree with that. Placing the cell tower issue on this board was clearly a political issue. Another quote from Treasurer LaFawn, and I actually agree with both of them. I wanted to send a message to be more transparent. And everybody should be more cognizant of what we are spending. Those are two great quotes, and I can assure you that every one of the department heads, every one of the leaders, every one of our vendors are cognizant of what we are spending. There's not a more cognizant group of public servants, in my experience, on the private sector or the public sector than that team. And maybe it's the tone and the way it's said. It's offensive to me. I do get emotional up here because I'm passionate about this township, this job, and I'm proud of putting our finger on fixing shoreline and paving a road, and I'm sorry. I am passionate about this, and I will continue to be. That's not going to change. One thing I want to make very clear on the F-35s, I need to make one thing clear. The majority of Chesterfield Township, in my opinion, and definitely the majority of this board, supports the Selfridge Air National Guard Base. The majority of this board understands the history of the base, the economic value of the base, and the importance of a sustainable military-only Selfridge. That issue I knew was going to be controversial. It was unfortunate that it has to be controversial, but the feedback, and last week's meeting was very long, so I couldn't get into too much of this. The reason why that was brought forward, one, we talked about then, President Trump was here, he mentioned it, it got a big shot in the arm. And two, was the feedback I've got from during the timeline, which is the Selfridge Sustainability Study from virtually all levels of government about the tone and image that was being portrayed by elected members of this board. I get calls from neighboring communities, calls from next level of government up, next level of government up, next level of government up, about there's flyers being passed around, anti-base. There's comments being passed around, anti-base. It doesn't reflect Chesterfield, and I didn't think it reflected this board. It's clear that that resolution passed. This board supports Selfridge, supports a sustainable Selfridge. If the next mission is the F-35s, very long shot that Chesterfield gets that, that's the support. The next mission behind that could be a louder plane. The next mission behind that may not exist. It may turn into a, God forbid, a shuttered Selfridge or a joint use of Selfridge, which is, hate to tell you, knocking right on the door if we don't get another mission. I am passionate about this job. I will continue to be passionate about this job as long as I'm sitting in this chair, and I'm sure we'll continue to fight like cats and dogs up here. Our next scheduled board meeting is Tuesday, March 17th. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by trustee Rhein, support by trustee Wasserberg. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed by saying nay. We are adjourned.